everyone. Happy So What Day. I hope you're having a great day so far. I have a lot to talk about today, so welcome. I'm glad you're with me this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. Be sure to be commenting, asking your questions in the comment box, liking and sharing today's post because I have a great giveaway as usual. I'll be giving away a thread sampler set of our 30 weight cotton blendables thread. I'm going to showcase that in just a moment, but today's giveaway is valued at more than $30. So be sure to be liking, commenting, sharing, and all of those good things so that you are eligible for today's giftie. Also, today we have a wonderful sale going on. Well, actually, it's a free shipping offer. So, no minimums. You will get free shipping. It is on USA orders only. So, be sure to put this coupon code in with your order so that you do get your free shipping, because I'm going to be showing you a brand new nifty little tool that we have at sulky.com right now, as well as some other great products that you are going to definitely want to add to your cart. So be sure to get your free shipping, and this code is good until April 12th. So we've got a little bit of time, and you can enjoy that. So as you can see in this great little picture, it is National Serger Month. National Serger Month is April, and it seems like there's a national month for everything, but I'll take it. You know what? Because I enjoy using my serger. I have two actually, because I'm kind of obsessed with machines, as you all know. So let me know in the comments how many of you own a serger, how many of you are looking to get a serger, how many of you want to know what a serger is, because that's what we're going to be talking about mostly today, is all things serger. So I welcome your questions. Bring them in the comments and we will address them several times throughout the episode today. All right, so I want to start by showing off a nifty little tool that we now have available at sulky.com. Now, I wanted to showcase this tool during our Boho Bonnie Bag video cast that we did in March. However, due to supply issues, which, as you know, the whole country is going through supply issues for various things, still due to the backlog of orders for things that were going on during the onslaught of COVID, we finally got them in. So now I can share with you how cool this little tool is. I am all about tools that are going to make my sewing faster, more accurate, and more fun, really, because struggling while we're sewing, that's just not what it's about. Sewing is supposed to be fun. So anytime I find a nifty little gadget that makes my life easier, I am going to share it with you so that hopefully it makes your life easier as well. This tool is called a hot ruler, and it is made by the folks at Clover. Like I said, we now have this available at sulky.com, so you can add it to your order, get free shipping on it today. What this does, I'm going to open it with you. I've waited to open it until I could do a little opening with you. So it's a very thin ruler, and it's made out of a material that you can iron over it, hence the hot ruler. And because it has such a narrow or skinny profile, you can iron hems and things of that nature, seam allowances, right over top of the ruler so that you have an extremely straight edge. So if you're making a pillow and you need to leave a little opening, you can fold your seam allowance along that entire edge, so your edge is leaving that opening. And then when you turn your, let's say, pillow right side out, your opening seam allowance edges are perfectly pressed to the wrong side, and you can slip stitch that closed, and you don't have any weird puckering along that seam. It just allows you to iron that edge so nice and crisp. So the reason I wanted to show this to you during the Bonnie Bag video cast is because that particular bag pattern, the whole thing is turned right side out through the interior zippered pocket. So you leave that zipper pocket lower edge open, and when everything is said and done, you turn the whole bag right side out, and then you sew that opening closed. So what's awesome about this hot ruler is you can press that lower edge opening on both the right and wrong sides of your pocket toward the wrong side, and it has all these nifty little markings. So when the pattern says fold it 3/8 to the wrong side, you don't have to mark that and get your ruler out. You just fold it right over top of the hot ruler, give it a good press, and your pocket has the crispest edge you've ever seen and completely accurate according to your needed seam allowance. Now, the pocket for the bag I'm talking about, I believe it was something like 11 inches long. So that's kind of long when you have to press an edge and make sure that it's even across the entire width or length of your fabric. So, hot ruler to the rescue. I think it is such a nifty little tool, and you guys are going to absolutely love it. If you have one already, give me a thumbs up. Let me know how you like it in the comments. If you don't have one and want to grab one, today is the day because they are now in stock. And like I said, free shipping, no minimums for USA orders. All right, so can't wait to use mine. I'm gonna leave it out of the packaging so it's ready to go. Sure, I will find something I need to use it for very quickly. All right, so a lot of you are chiming in about the hot ruler, giving me the thumbs up. I love it. And questions are coming in about using a serger. We will get to that momentarily. First, I'll show you here. Hold, please. Okay, here's the hot ruler in action. So you can see folding over that edge to the wrong side and ironing right over the top of that ruler. I mean, genius. Why didn't I think of this? All right, so speaking of webcasts and videocasts, because I was just talking about the Boho Bonnie Bag videocast, our next webcast is happening next Tuesday. It is at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is the road trip quilt. Here's the road trip quilt. So, during this webcast, completely free to attend, you can register right now. I put the link to register in the description of today's post, which is very long because I have lots of links to share with you today. So if you're not seeing the links to register, click on the little See More button in the description of this live feed, and the whole description will pop out and you'll see everything I'm linking to, and you can easily head on over and register for the Road Trip Quilt webcast. Our special guest, her name is Rachel Painter, and she is the designer behind Fiona Sandwich quilt patterns. I don't know if you all have heard of Fiona Sandwich, but during the webcast, you're going to learn all about her business and why it's called Fiona Sandwich, and all about Rachel. She's a fantastic, fascinating designer, and she creates national park themed quilt patterns as well as tons of other ones. But a lot of her patterns have these motifs of things found in nature. Trees, mountains, birds, or bears, animals. And so she put together this quilt pattern for our webcast to, first off, teach you how to do foundation paper piecing using Sulky Paper Solvy. If you are a fan of So What, You have heard me talk about sulky paper solvy again and again because I think it is such a revolutionary product. If you do any kind of paper piecing, really, it would even work with English paper piecing, but for foundation paper piecing, sometimes you get these intricate block patterns and you're using such small pieces of fabric that when your block is completed, you have to pick out all of this paper, try to perforate it along your seam lines, and sometimes you can pull out your stitching or, cause yourself to have to redo portions of the block after you have taken apart all of the paper from behind your work. Paper solvy is water soluble. So there are a couple of different ways you can go about removing the paper solvy once you have created your blocks. You can moisten a cotton swab or Q-tip, run it along the seam lines and lift the paper away, or you can leave the paper in your blocks, complete your entire quilt top, even go to bind it and finish the quilting, and then wash it, and all the paper solvy will dissolve away. So it makes things much, much easier, much quicker. It's just great to use, and you're going to learn all about how to do foundation paper piecing. If you are a newbie to this technique, you will see just how fun and easy it can be. We're also going to go over different threads to use for different quilting applications, whether it be piecing or the actual quilting. So you're going to learn lots and lots of techniques during this webcast. And of course, we have kits available. So now we've got our road trip quilt kit. It is already on sale. It will be on sale up to midnight, the day of the event, so next Tuesday. It includes a special pack of paper solvy, which will give you, I believe, 33 sheets of paper solvy so that you can use it to print out every single block and create that size quilt that I just showed you. It also comes with beautiful Kona cottons in the colors needed for the road trip quilt, as well as a pack of needles and 2 great threads to use for the piecing as well as the quilting. This comes with a 30 weight cotton blendables variety of thread for the quilting, which is what our giveaway is today. Today's giveaway for one lucky viewer of our Facebook Live right now will win a sampler pack of the 30 weight cotton blendables. The blendables are unlike any other variegated thread you would find on the market because they are dyed randomly across the thread length. So every 2.5 to 5 inches of thread, you're going to see a different color pattern. So if you are straight line quilting or even using a digitized design on a long arm machine, you won't have the same repeating color pattern across the width or length of your quilt. So very unique thread. No other company offers a thread like this. And I'm excited for one winner to win that sampler pack, but also you will get a spool of blendables thread with this quilt kit. And it's actually a really great value right now. You will get enough to create that quilt top plus some extras if you want to add in some different blocks or make your quilt slightly larger, or you can use the extra thread for your binding of the quilt. So we're going to learn all about how to use this great kit. You'll also, of course, get the pattern with this kit purchase. Now, we are also offering the pattern separately as a digital product. So I know that you all are always asking, can I just buy the pattern? I have a lot of sulky thread. I have the stabilizer that I need. Can I please just get the pattern? So for the first time, we are offering the digital pattern as a standalone purchase as well. The pattern itself is $25. And I linked, I believe I linked to getting the digital pattern as well in the description of today's post. So if you're interested in just getting the pattern, you can. However, at $25, you might as well spend the extra 40 some dollars and get the entire kit and get all those great, beautiful Kona cotton fabrics as well. So a couple of different options depending on what you want to do, but in either case, you'll get lots of block patterns. The quilt pattern, again, comes with several blocks, not just the ones that you see here in the road trip quilt. So there are different ways of personalizing it based on what you want to do. And you'll also see in this close-up picture that I'm showing you right now, there is a block that showcases a brown sort of trapezoidal rectangular shape. That is meant to mimic a national park sign. So if you are a road tripper yourself and you have visited a bunch of national parks and you have a little patch, or if you have grandkids that are junior rangers and they are collecting their patches, this is a great place or way to display all of those patches. Alternatively, you could stitch a embroidery design in each one of those little national park sign blocks and further personalize it for yourself. So lots and lots of options that we will be learning during this webcast. And plus you'll get to meet Rachel. She's just great, like I mentioned. What else do I have to say about this webcast? Oh, I knew there was something else. So typically when we do a webcast or videocast, I join you in the morning/afternoon right before the webcast begins here on Facebook Live. So many of you are kind of not understanding that what we do on Facebook Live is totally different from what we do in our live videocasts and webcasts. They are on two different platforms. Here on Facebook Live, we chit chat, we share experiences. I tell you about new products and fun events that we're doing and things like that. On our webcasts, we dive into a project. We learn tons of techniques. Most of the time, we host an instructor that is an expert in the field that they are discussing during the webcast. And it's a much longer experience, anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, and it's more like an online class experience. So I know here on Facebook Live, sometimes I dive into a project and techniques as well, but it's completely different from our free webcasts and our videocast options that we have at sewingonline.sulky.com. So in order to further differentiate what we do here on Facebook and what we do on our education platform, we're going to change it up next week. And So What will be happening on a different day. I know, your Tuesdays will never be the same. So if you have subscribed to our newsletter, you will get a notification of the day and time of the So What for next week. And this way we can devote all of our time and energy next Tuesday to the Road Trip Quilt webcast. So I hope that doesn't further confuse things, but we're changing it up and we're going to see how it works. And you all can give us your feedback regarding how it worked for you. So that's the plan, just so you all have a heads up. All right, so here are the blendables that come in the sampler pack that I was talking about earlier. This is going to be what one lucky winner will receive for commenting, liking, sharing, and engaging with this post right here today. So this is the Cotton Blendables Sampler Pack. You can see lots of different color variations. There's a neutral, all kinds of different ways of quilting your quilt or using decorative stitches on your serger. So this is my fantastic segue into the wonderful world of serging. And to start things off, I wanted to show you, speaking of winners, This is the lovely Rebecca Taylor. Who is Rebecca Taylor, you ask? Well, Rebecca joined us for our New Year's Eve sew-along that we did in 2020 with Sally Tomato. If you did not attend our New Year's Eve sew-along, you can still head on over to sewingonline.sulky.com and you can purchase that sew-along and get the pattern for the wonderful fringe bag that we made that night. This was a sew-along in every sense of the word. It was a 4-hour sewing event that we did all virtually, and we made a bag from start to finish, including embroidery, and it was a super fun time. During that event, we had fabulous door prizes. Like, I think we actually had 21 door prizes for, ringing in 2021. And we had so many winners that night. It was so fun. Our grand prize was this Husqvarna Viking Amber Air Serger. And Rebecca Taylor was the winner. She graciously sent a photo of herself learning all the stitches on that serger. She was so excited to win, as any of us would be. And I just wanted to share this picture with you because every time we do a webcast or videocast, we have fantastic door prizes. Now, I will admit, winning a serger was definitely the cherry on the sundae for New Year's Eve. Normally, our door prizes vary in value, anywhere from $19.99 all the way up to $250. For special events like our New Year's Eve event, we were very, very lucky to have some partners in the industry who supplied us with some super great grand prizes. So you never know what you could possibly win. It's a great time to always join us for these live events because you could be just like Rebecca and win a fantastic serger. You could win more sulky thread. You could win a slim line of poly sparkle thread. Who knows? All right. So I wanted to show you Rebecca with her serger because just like all of us, or just like a lot of us, a serger can be somewhat of a mystery. A lot of people only use a serger to finish off seams. So it makes sense if you do a lot of garment sewing that you would want a serger to finish those seams and create the seam all in one pass under the machine foot. It's such a time saver. If you also like to sew knits, a serger is your best friend because it feeds all of those knit layers through the machine without stretching, without puckering, and it's so fast. Now, a lot of people also ask me, what is the difference between, here's an image of some fantastic serging. A lot of people always ask me, what is the difference between a serger and a cover stitch machine? Because yes, they are different, but they can also be a combo machine. There are super fancy sergers that also allow you to do a cover stitch. Now, a cover stitch is done without the blade. A overlock stitch, which you would normally do on a serger to finish the edges of fabric, is done with a blade so that you are trimming your seam allowance, sewing your seam, and finishing the edges of your seam allowance, again, all in one pass. So I grabbed this great image. This is from the Janome website, janome.com. So I did not take this image, but I thought it showcased the difference between a cover stitch and an overlock stitch very well. So you can see the overlock is that finishing stitch for your edge. It has looper stitches, which is what loop around the raw edge of the fabric, as well as the stitches that secure the seam. The cover stitch is what you will see on your t-shirt hems. And this finishes your hem and then has that great little sort of cover stitch along the edge of your hem allowance. So the right side looks like you sewed it with a twin needle or sometimes even with 3 needles. And the wrong side completely encases that hem raw edge. So, like I said, some super fancy sergers will allow you to stitch either a cover stitch or an overlock stitch, as well as lots of specialty stitches as well, wave stitches, so many different decorative applications. However, if you have only a cover stitch machine, you will only be able to do cover stitches. Okay, so be mindful if you are in the market for a serger. Do you want this just to be able to do cover stitch and you have another machine that would allow you to do an overlock stitch? Because a lot of standard sewing machines will also allow you to do kind of a mock overlock stitch or an overlock stitch in and of itself. There are a lot of other criteria to consider when you are in the market for a serger. So I put together a blog post that kind of lists the things that you should consider if you are in the market for a serger. So that is what I linked to in the description of today's post, is that Sulky blog post where you can find lots of links and resources for other people in the industry who have really done a deep dive into what to consider when you're purchasing a serger, what's the difference between an overlock and cover stitch machine. So there's a lot more information in that blog post. All right, so speaking of decorative applications, did you know that your serger can also do decorative applications? You don't have to only use it for practical or sort of construction seams. You can also have a lot of fun with exposed seams. If you're creating a really pretty jacket out of, let's say, a boiled wool, and you don't want to have to line the jacket, it's really cool to do a decorative serger stitch on all of your seams on the inside of the jacket. Even if your jacket is lined, you could still show off some really pretty threads. And in this case, with the image that I'm showing you here, these are actually decorative tucks that are done on a pillow. So these are actually shown on the right side as a decorative application. And guess what? It is showcasing the Sulky 30 weight cotton blendables thread. So you would put the cotton blendables thread in the loopers. The loopers, again, are what are underneath the machine. They kind of come out like scissors almost. And those threads loop around the edge of the fabric. Then you could use a lighter weight thread in your needles or a 30 weight thread as well and create a really pretty 4-thread overlock stitch and showcase that on tucks to make a really pretty pillow. I also wanted to show you that you could use metallic thread in the serger. So yes, it is kind of a myth that you have to use serger thread in a serger. You can use whatever thread you want. You really just need to make sure that whether you have a 1 needle or 2 needle, that those needles are large enough or small enough to accommodate the thread weight that you're using. So I know what your next question is going to be. I have to change the needles in my serger? Everyone out there, please let me know, when was the last time you changed the needles in your serger? Was it when the needle broke? Or do you do that regularly just like you would do in your standard sewing machine? I'm waiting for people to chime in. Lots of people saying, I need to drag out my serger. All right, so before I go through sort of this metallic look for decorative applications. I'm just going to address some of the questions that have come in. All right, so speaking of needle size, what size needle for metallic thread? So we always recommend a size 90-14 needle for metallic threads. You'd also want to use a 90-14 for that 30 weight cotton thread as well. If you're using a lighter weight thread like a 40 weight poly deco, which is what I also like to use for a lot of serger applications, an 80-12 needle is perfect for that. I also like to use the 50 weight cotton and steel thread by Sulky in my serger. I will use that for knitwear, cottons, and for that you can get away with like a 70-10 or 75-11 needle. Now, another thing I want to talk about before we go into this metallic thread look is serger needles. Now, on the Sulky website, you know I'm a fan of Oregon needles, and that's what we have at sulky.com. You will find these two needle types. They say ELX 705, CR, or CRSUK. Let me pull these up a little bit larger so you can see. So let's start with the CR needle. This is the needle that you need for your serger. The CR stands for chrome plated or chromium. That's what the needle is coated with. I'm not really sure what the EL 705 stands for. Probably should have learned that before I was showing you this picture. But these come in 80-12. They also come in 90-14. So this is what you want to swap out for your serger needles when your needles are starting to get dull or with each project. Now, what is the SUK needle? This is the needle you want to use for knitwear. So it has a slightly more ballpoint to it. So when you are sewing your knitwear, your needles are not piercing through those loops of your knit. It's pushing it apart, pushing the fibers apart rather than piercing through them. That's what your ballpoint needle will do. You want to do that to avoid snags and things like that when you are sewing your knits. So that is the difference between those two types of needles, and these are the needles you want to be using in your serger. All right, so back to this metallic thread image. So here's where you can see your looper threads versus your needle threads, we'll say. And in this image, you can see a variety of threads were used. The 30 weight cotton, the hollow shimmer metallic, 30 weight cotton in the lower looper, and then hollow shimmer multicolor in the other looper. So you can really see the difference there. Now, I highly recommend when you are starting out on your serger journey, or if you have just purchased your serger, you got it out of the box, grab a thread spool in a different color for each needle and each looper and do a bunch of test stitches, try out different widths of stitches, different types of stitches, all of those good things. Go through the manual and test out all different kinds of stitches. When you are doing all of those tests in different colors, it will be easier for you to identify which needle and which looper is doing what on your finished stitch. So if you happen to have a tension issue, you are not achieving a balanced stitch, it'll be easier for you to identify where you need to make an adjustment for which needle or for which looper. And you can always keep these test stitch outs, keep them in your binder with your embroidery stitch outs, write on them, using a permanent marker, or you can use the Sulky iron-on transfer pen markers, which are permanent, so that you can reference that later. I also wanted to show you, here's a comparison of some different thread weights and different serger settings. So depending on your desired finished look, you know, the image to the left here, you could use that stitch on the entire perimeter of like a fleece blanket. And there you have your finished edge. Use a really narrow stitch length setting and a pretty blendables variety, and all of a sudden your blanket edge is finished. So this is a really cool way, again, showing off the blendables or multicolored metallics. Really, really cool way of finishing things off. So speaking of tension, now I found this wonderful resource and I linked to it in the blog post about sergers. This is doitbetteryourself.club. Okay, so in this image you could see DIBY. That stands for Do It Better Yourself. It is a great resource for all things serger, and in particular there are images of what does a balanced stitch look like, and what does it look like when one of my needles needs a tension adjustment or one of my loopers needs a tension adjustment. There's a great infographic that you can print out that shows you, okay, if my stitch looks like this, I need to make this adjustment to the lower looper. If my stitch looks like this, then my upper looper needs an adjustment. It's a fantastic resource, and I highly suggest you head on over to the blog post so that you can get the link for that, because you can print out this infographic, and also you can print out these handy little serger setting cards. You can print this out on your regular printer paper, and with each project that you do, you can say, I worked with this fabric. These were all the settings for my loopers and for my needles. This was what my differential feed setting was. And when you go to use the same fabric or create the same pattern again, if you're making multiple t-shirts, let's say, you have a really great reference, and it's pretty cute too, that you have filled out and you can refer to later. So through that link, you'll find the free printable for these serger setting cards, as well as the great infographic that shows you what is a balanced stitch and how do I create those balanced stitches using different thread weights, different stitch lengths and widths. Anyway, you get the idea. It's a really great resource. I can't take credit for it at all, but I linked to it in the blog post so that you all could find it. Okay, so lots of people are asking about serger specific questions. Okay, can you use a serger for finishing a quilt instead of your binding? So you certainly could, but here's the thing. When you're doing, let's say, a 4-thread overlock along the edge of like a fleece blanket, like I mentioned, you're still going to see that raw edge of your fabric kind of poking out here and there, even if your stitches are so close together. So I'm not sure that you would want that look for your finished quilt, but there are really cool serger attachments. I don't know if you are all aware of this, but you can get serger attachments that allow you to bind your quilt with either pre-made bias binding or self-made binding. They're called binder attachments, and you kind of screw them into your machine bed, and you can feed your binding through it and run the edge of your quilt into your serger, and your binding wraps around your edge while you are sewing it. It's revolutionary. I demoed this foot on an episode of Fons and Porter's Love of Quilting years ago, and we made a little pot holder, and it was Mary Fons and I, and you'd be amazed at how quickly this little, or actually it was a table runner, excuse me. You'd be amazed at how quickly the table runner was bound using the serger attachment. So we did a serge as you go quilted table runner and bound it with the serger as well. So we didn't even have to go to a standard sewing machine. We did the whole project on a serger. So check it out. You might be able to find it on maybe your local PBS website, but really, really cool attachments. I highly suggest checking out when you grab your serger, or if you already have one, you can kind of upgrade by getting a serger foot attachment. I recently got a box of serger feet to go with my Baby Lock Triumph, and man, does that expand your capabilities. There are serger feet that are for piping. There are serger feet that allow you to add beads, like a beaded edge of something, and it basically has a little lip in the foot, or like an open bump in the foot to accept the beads. It's so awesome. So definitely check that out. Teresa is saying, I have a binder foot for my sewing machine. I had no idea there was one for a serger. I know. Definitely check it out. Go to your Serger brand website and see if they have something like that. Okay. Oh, this is a good idea. Brenda says, I use my serger with fusible thread to put my binding on. Then I fuse it down so it is really nice to stitch it down. That is a great, great idea. You could also use, I've done quick binding kind of in a similar fashion, but using the Sulky KK2000. I will stitch my first binding seam and then actually spray the binding with the KK as I wrap it around to the back, making my binding really, really secure on the back side of my quilt. And then you can finish it either by hand or machine, and you're guaranteed that binding isn't going to shift. Okay. Sandra says, doing test stitch outs is a great idea. My serger is over 20 years old, but still works. That's a good quality serger. At least it did when I last used it. So let me know in the comments, when was the last time you used your serger, and what do you use it most for? Do you do serge as you go items like I was just talking about? Do you use it mostly for garments? Do you use it mostly for knits? I can't imagine doing a knit garment without my serger anymore, because like I said, no puckering, no lettuce edges, no waviness goes on when you're sewing knits. You don't have to do a ton of adjustments, and plus that finished edge and the way it is sewn, it stretches with the knit. So you don't have any popping seams. If your, stretch stitch is too tight on your standard machine. So there are definitely ways, obviously, of sewing knits using a standard sewing machine, but man, a serger just makes it so much easier. Okay. Doris is asking, are you going to show us curves and corners and the best way to tie off? So that is a great question, Doris. And, I will mention we did a serger webinar last year, I want to say. All the webcasts and things start swimming around in my head after a while. But we did a serger webinar last year where we made a tote bag using a serger. And it was a very basic kind of entry into using a serger. And after that webcast, I got a lot of feedback from people who want more serger content. How do we do corners? How do we do nice curves? Exactly what you're asking. So we will have a follow-up to that. I'm actually developing a longer format serger education opportunity. So you're hearing it here first, but it is in development. These things take a lot more time than everyone would probably imagine to develop and execute. But do stay tuned, because it's going to be chock full of lots more information. I went into all the questions and answers from that previous webcast and noted all of the similar themes, things people wanted to know, and that's what I'm using to build out this next sort of, more intermediate level serger event. So we will get all of those answers for you, and we will be having a fantastic expert along for the ride. So I think you will all really enjoy it. Oh, Michelle is saying, one of those transfer pens came in my mystery box. Oh yeah, who all got a mystery box? I know, I love the mystery boxes. Yvonne is saying, I'm surprised the smaller sulky spools can be used on the serger when the cones I use are really quite large. So yes, you can use a smaller spool on your serger. So your serger should come with a couple of different spool pin sizes. The spool pin is the spool pin cover is what is holding your thread either from underneath or up above or both, depending on your brand. And you want to make sure that you adjust that cover size based on the spool size that you're using. So if you're used to using the large serger cones and you want to move to a more decorative thread like a 30 weight king spool, then just make sure that it fits on that little spool pin cap. That's what it's called. All right. Let's see if I'm addressing all of the questions. Again, if you are asking questions, commenting, liking, and sharing the post, our giveaway today is the great 30 weight cotton blendables. These are our best-selling color sampler. So 6 spools of those king-size spools, which work great in the serger, also work great for quilty projects. So I think you're going to love working with that thread. Some people saying, haven't used my serger in years, still in my closet, things like that. Jennifer is saying, purchased a Baby Lock Evolution, barely used, haven't used it yet. So now is the time for National Serger Month to break it out, get your manual out, get some different threads going, and experiment. So, okay. Michelle is asking, what is the difference between serger thread and sewing machine thread other than size? So this is kind of debatable, I guess. Mostly the difference is that they're calling it serger thread. A lot of the time serger thread is pretty lightweight, polyester blend variety. Sometimes serger thread is actually stretchy as well. There is serger thread that, other than size, honestly, I don't really think there's much of a difference. You do need to be aware of what it's made of, whether it's polyester, cotton, wool, nylon, a blend. Like I said, I like using the 30 weight cotton for decorative applications. I like using the 50 weight sulky cotton thread for construction. I like using the 40 weight poly deco for construction when I'm working on like a more heavier weight fabric, or like a bag, let's say. The poly deco is what we used for the market tote bag that we did in our webinar that I was talking about, which is called Serger Smarts. Also during that webinar, we talked a lot about using sulky filaine thread. Filaine is a 100% acrylic thread. You can also use that for decorative serger applications. That's a really nice finish for, let's say, a fleece blanket, because the acrylic thread has a fuzzy texture to it. So you're kind of mimicking the texture of your decorative thread with the fuzzy texture of your fleece blanket. So that's a nice combination. So I didn't really answer that question, but I hope that makes sense. Okay. Deborah is talking about changing needles. The serger needles seem to last longer than sewing or embroidery machine needles, but I guess it's time to change them. Yes, a good rule of thumb is if you can't remember the last time you changed those needles, it's time to change them. Also, some people have said, honestly, I don't really change the needles unless I notice that the stitching starts to get kind of wonky, or if the needle breaks. So remember, changing those needles can really change your life and give you a more balanced stitch. A lot of the times people look to the thread or the way that your machine is threaded and really agonize over that. The first thing I will do if I notice my tension seems to be getting off and it was okay, a few stitches ago, or if the stitches just aren't forming properly, the very first thing I do is swap out my needles before I ever start messing with tension or thread or rethreading the machine. So that's just kind of my rule of thumb. And I do the same thing with my sewing machine as well. I always change the needle first, and then I see if the problem has been solved, and then I go to, adjusting other things as needed. Lots of people saying they want to get their serger out. I hope that this inspires you and you look at April as National Serger Month and you kind of dive into learning more about your serger. Rolled edges, rolled hems. That is another great way of finishing things off. Rolled edges on napkins. We have an entire blog post on 4th of July, a 4th of July place setting with napkins with a rolled edge. And Pamela Cox wrote that for us. And she is really a machine embroidery and serger expert. And she likes using all these beautiful decorative threads. So it's a great way to finish napkins. And then the question about tying off the threads. So if you're doing a rolled edge or a straight, let's say 4-thread overlock edge, and you're doing corners of napkins and your serger tails are extending beyond your fabric edge, one way of finishing those off so that they don't fray is to thread them into a large needle. You could even use like a plastic needle that you would use for knitting or crochet. You can thread that serger tail into that needle and kind of weave the end up through the adjacent edge of stitching. Then kind of trim it off and tuck it into the other serger stitches. Hopefully that makes sense. That way, your tail is kind of encased, right? And it's not going to fray off where you have this really kind of ugly edge with your thread tails poking out. Oh, Diane uses her serger almost every day and wouldn't be able to live without it. I hear you, Diane. All right. Oh, Deborah used a blendable variety in an embroidery for her boho bag. So that's a great idea. I love using that for embroidery as well. You do have to make sure that your embroidery design is digitized for 30 weight thread, or do sort of a line art style design with not a lot of fill stitches so that your heavier weight thread doesn't kind of stitch over itself and all kinds of those things. All right. Ooh, Cheryl, we've may have converted Cheryl. She might look into getting a serger. There are some really affordable options out there. And then, of course, just like sewing machines, there are the Mamba Jambas out there that cost, that are, let's just say, super high end. um, if you can afford it, get the best serger that you possibly can. If you're on a budget, go for a lower end model that has the functions that you think you will most use. I really recommend making sure you can do a 4-thread overlock, meaning you will have 2 needles with your 2 loopers. If your machine will only do a 3-thread overlock, I mean, that's acceptable and that will get you by, but I think you will really enjoy the flexibility that you will have with those 2 needles and the ability to do more decorative stitch types and applications like those wave stitches and stuff I was talking about. So I recommend getting at least, a 4-thread serger. Some of them go all the way up to 8 and 10 threads that can be accommodated. So, and maybe even more now, I'm not really sure, but there are a lot of really good quality sergers out there. Juki, Brother, Baby Lock. I don't know if you all know this, but the reason Baby Lock is named Baby Lock is because they were the first company to bring sergers to the home sewing market. And, with these big industrial overlock machines, they started calling them Baby Lock machines because they were smaller and for the home sewer. So there's your trivia for today. Why Baby Lock is named Baby Lock. All right, Linda doesn't have a serger yet, but really would like one. Okay. Pat's going to do a 4-day serger boot camp next month. That sounds awesome. It's a really great idea to seek out classes from your sewing machine dealer, seek out classes from the sewing machine manufacturer on their website, learn from the experts that help design these machines, test the machines, all that good stuff. There's a lot of free information out there. But, if you pay a little bit for the class that you're taking, you'll probably get a little bit more information, maybe even some free projects and patterns that you can create using your serger as well. So really, really think about that. With this whole year we've been having with everything going virtual, there are just a plethora of options out there. And I do hope that you look to Sulky for those as well as we expand our education offerings to really bring you what you want to see. So we really take your comments and criticisms and requests to heart. And that is what we use to develop our content and develop our courses and events. So keep it coming. We love to hear from you. If I'm not answering your question, it's getting lost in the feed, and you really want an answer today immediately, definitely reach out at info@sulky.com. We are always here to make sure you get an answer to your question. And let me just see if we've got some more questions to answer. Okay. Do all sergers use the same needles? I have 3 sergers. Okay, so that's a great question. And it might be discussed in your manual. As far as needle type, I can really only speak about the organ needles. And for organ needles, you do need to make sure you have that CR, the EL 705 CR needles for your serger or cover stitch machine. And that SUK is for knitwear, for sewing knits and stretchy fabrics. So that's the case with organ needles. So you would need to, if you're using a different brand of needle, you would just need to reach out and ask them which needles are suitable for the serger. And more than likely, your serger came with a pack of needles as well, or at least a couple of extras. So you could take note of what size and type those are as well, if it's on the packaging. I know sometimes it's kind of hard to decipher. Okay. Sharon says, I keep an index card for each machine on when I change the needle and what size it is. That is so organized and so nice. You know, what I also like about these organ needles is the way you can store them, because inside, once you pull that down, inside you can see it has like this corrugated cardboard. So when you partially use a needle, let's say you do a quickie machine embroidery that only has, you know, a couple hundred stitches in it, you didn't get all the life out of that embroidery needle, but you need to switch to sewing mode now. You could take your embroidery needle that you just used and move it a couple of places to the left or right. And then when you store this on your pegboard or hook in your sewing room, you know that that is the needle you can go back to and get more life out of. So I absolutely love that. But it's a great idea if you have changed the needle and you finish the project. You know, you're not going to take the needle out and store it, right? So it's a great idea to put a little sticky note or something like that on the front of your sewing machine and say, this is a quilting 8012. That's what's in the machine. And then you don't have to get out your magnifying glass to see what needle is in your machine. The other great thing about organ needles is a lot of them are color coded. Embroideries are pink, quiltings are green. So you can see really easily at least the type of needle that you have installed in your machine based on the color. And then you can get your magnifying glass out and figure out the size of needle that's in your machine. Oh, Gayla is saying, I love my mystery box. I received a purse pattern by Sally Tomato. So that's really cool. We love our relationship with Sally Tomato. And yeah. All right. Paula says her new Juki is on the way. Cannot wait. So I'm so glad that a lot of you have sergers already. And a lot of you, you know, have been intimidated by your serger and maybe have just been staring at it for a little while. I think the most intimidating thing for people is threading it, right? So the Amber Air that I was showing you that Rebecca won for our New Year's Eve event, that has air threading technology. Baby locks have air threading technology where you, to thread your loopers, which is the most difficult or most intimidating part, I should say, you actually stick your thread ends into these little ports or holes in the front of their machine, press a little button, and air shoots the thread through into the loopers and out so that you don't have to get your tweezers out and fiddle with making sure that it's threaded properly, you know, in the guts or in the loopers of your serger. I know a lot of people who they just get a neutral serger thread, they keep it in there until the thread runs out, and then they will rethread the machine, potentially with another neutral color, because they don't like threading it so much. Really, it's just like threading your sewing, excuse me, your sewing machine, in that the more you do it, the easier it will become. It will become like second nature, and you'll be able to do it lickety split, just like you thread your regular sewing machine. So I highly recommend doing it a bunch of times. Swap out your thread for different thread weights. Really experiment with all the fun that you can have with these different types of thread in your serger. Don't be intimidated by threading it if you don't have that air thread technology on your model, because honestly, like I said, the more you do it, the better you will become at it. So in the blog post that I linked to about Serger Month and Serger resources, I also put some great products that will kind of make your serger part of your sewing room instead of a fixture in your closet. I talk about getting a dedicated little serger table. There are some great little like square tables that have drawers that hold your serger perfectly. You can see Right here, I have my serger on an IKEA cabinet that is on wheels, so I can move it around and get it closer to me while I'm serging, and it comes with a lot of drawers with it. There's also a great arrow sewing cabinet that I linked to in the post that works for a smaller serger. If you have your serger on a dedicated place in your sewing room, you will be more likely to use it. I also linked to a really cool tool that is it's actually a magnifying light, a magnifying glass slash task light. So if you do have to use those tweezers to thread your loopers, adding one of these, it's like a little clip-on light to the little table that you have dedicated for your serger. And you can move the little magnifier so that you can really see those loopers and get your tweezers in there and make sure that it's threaded properly. And it puts a little bit more light on the scene. And it's a super affordable little tool, and it will just make your life easier. So like I said in the beginning of today's episode, anytime I come across something that's going to make my sewing easier, faster, more fun, I'm going to get it and I'm going to share that information with you. So I hope that that comes in handy. You know, if you struggle with threading your serger, look to some tools that are going to make that easier for you. All right. So thank you everyone for tuning in today for All Things Serger. Remember to register for our road trip quilt webcast happening next week at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can register for this at sewingonline.sulky.com. I linked to the registration. It's absolutely free to attend. I linked to this in the description of today's post, so be sure to register today. You will get a reminder before we go live next week. You'll meet Rachel Painter of Fiona Sandwich Quilt Patterns. We will learn this great National Parks road trip quilt pattern, as well as the basics and a little bit more intermediate techniques for foundation paper piecing. So be sure to do that. And then again, one lucky winner is going to win, our best sellers in our cotton blendables thread. That is today's little giftie for somebody who is commenting, liking, sharing today's post. So join me next week for the webcast. And again, we will be changing up the day for So What next week. So I do hope you are able to join that as well. So thank you for spending this time with me today. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you next time.